You saw the thumbnail, you saw that title. Let's get to it. Merry Christmas, everybody. I appreciate you all stopping by on tonight. All right. So I strongly discourage people checking out YouTube during the holiday time, because I had to reach over to Lady Dear Woke Christian and say, Lady Dear Woke Christian, please hold my eggnog, because Brandon done said something retarded today. And I something about it. I got to. All right. I've been pointing this out quite a bit as I've been talking about Brandon from Mind Shift. Let me get this video brought in real quick as well. I've been saying this a lot about Brandon from Mind Shift, that he deliberately, even say intentionally, misrepresents what the scriptures teach. And a lot of the time, and this one is a perfect example, a lot of the time, this is a quick, I hate to say it, Google search to find the answer that you want. Emphasis on that you want. Brandon doesn't want the answers. Brandon wants the scriptures to look as crazy as he can possibly make it. And this is another example. He does it again here. It's ridiculous. And I'm like, my God, if you wanted to just say you don't respect the scriptures, which is perfectly fine, nobody would argue with that. We already know. But again, like, this guy just makes such a caricature of the scriptures. It doesn't even make sense. So most of you know, of course, the story of Jesus's birth. Part of that story is that once Jesus was born, the wise men came to Jerusalem, came and said, "Hey, where's this king we're looking for?" And Herod said, "I don't know. Tell me where he is so I can go worship him too." And of course, he was going to go murder him. And so once the wise men found Mary and Joseph, they doled out the gifts. Mary and Joseph were warned by an angel to flee to Egypt, and they fled. Now then, Herod, looking for Jesus, just started a mass genocide in Bethlehem. Okay, most of us pretty much have heard that story. Now, Brandon's going to make two arguments. One, that the story is completely and totally made up. The other one is that the story is real, and what are the implications thereof. So what we're going to do is we're going to listen to his argument for why it is completely and totally made up. He makes some errors here that are just glaring. It is just like your favorite football player missing a wide open catch in the backfield, could have won the game, completely biffing it. Your favorite baseball player in the outfield, totally missing the catch, whatever. It's completely egregious, and we're going to talk about why. So let's jump in. Here we go. Brandon, what we got?
Let's dive into today's video, and we're going to look at the first possibility, which is that this story did not happen. So why does Matthew say that it happened? How can we know that it's not factual? What are
So one of the quick things before we get in here, Brandon makes an assumption that Matthew is just telling the story on his own steam. That he just wants to tell this story about Jesus without any inspiration from God the Holy Spirit. Now, we as Christians believe that God the Holy Spirit did inspire the synoptic gospels, as well as the book of John, as well as the rest of all the 66 books of the Old and New Testament, that they are inspired by God the Holy Spirit. That's why we see that common thread. Watch what Brandon does here.
some of the issues with it, and what were the intentions in trying to create it? Let's set the stage. Who are we talking about? We're talking about Herod the Great, who was a remarkable politician, by the way. You see, Rome had conquered Judea in 63 BCE, and Herod was playing a Roman governor slash what they call a client king, which is why he's also called King Herod. But really, he's just a Roman governor overseeing this city-state. He came into this position around 40 BCE, but it took a few years to get things under control. So really, his reign is from about 37 BCE until his death in 4 BCE.
And real quick, the reason I'm playing all this out, because you're going to be saying like, Jason, what's the deal real with this? The reason I'm playing all of this, because I want you to hear what Herod did. And I want you to ask yourself, how does Brandon know what Herod has done?
Now, if you're thinking, well, if he died in 4 BCE and Jesus was born in year 0, how did this happen? And you would be right in asking that question. And there are many apologetic and historical answers to this. Maybe Christ was actually born between 4 and 6 BCE. Maybe we got Herod's death wrong. Maybe the story never really happened in the first place. It's not a hill to die on for this story, though, because there is a high possibility that we have Jesus's birth in an incorrect year. But Herod was a great builder. He totally redid Jerusalem and added theaters and stages and domes and an amazing palace for himself and all kinds of things that completely changed the city. He built cities. The most famous city he built was probably Caesarea, which he built in just 12 years, which is a huge accomplishment for the ancient world. We know he built other cities. He had 7 strong fortresses, the biggest and best probably being the one in Masada. And so again, from a political standpoint, he was just killing it. But his personal life was kind of funky. And
So let me ask you a question. Do you think that every one of his actions, deeds, and accomplishments in each one of those small little city building projects, all those fortress building projects, every one of those was categorized and captured for all of history? Just asking a question. Do you think that that is the case?
we know this, by the way, because of Josephus. Now, a lot of times, and I've gotten this comment just yesterday even, Jesus is the most well-attested figure in history. Wrong. It's King Herod the Great. Can you believe it? Even over Alexander the Great, over Jesus, over Paul, over any of them. Even ask Christian scholars. Josephus does 2 full book scrolls for Herod. So we have a ton of information.
But I'm only asking, do we have all of the information? There's going to be a reason why I've asked that. Do you have everything that Herod did? Every single thing he did? Do we?
So we do know he had 10 wives, which means he had tons of potential princes that were having all of these fights and plotting and scheming and murdering to try to make sure they're next in line, etc. That would drive anyone to paranoia. And we do have good reason to believe from Josephus's accounts that this person, Herod, was indeed a bit paranoid. He killed his wives. He killed his mother-in-laws. He killed some of his own sons. We have records of him wanting and plotting and planning to kill a ton of the Jewish leaders. So it's not out of the realm of possibility that someone with this temperament would therefore go and also try to kill all the babies when he's heard about some prophecy of one of them turning into the next king of the Jews. And I get it.
Okay, so he's building a case that, hey, we know all this information about Herod. We should also know about the genocide that happened in Bethlehem. Okay, I think that's fair. I don't think that's a hill too far to say that we should know that. But should we?
We can't guess at this. And a lot of times the atheist who says, well, we have all this information from Josephus and look, they didn't mention the child killing. It is an argument from silence. And it's funny to see the Christian be the one who uses the logical fallacy against the non-believer in this particular situation. But I don't think it's just an argument from silence. First of all, if it is, it's one of the strongest ones ever because we, again, have so much information and such good record keeping about this particular individual that something as insane and heinous as just murdering random baby children to avoid a potential threat that clearly wouldn't even be of age to take over from you when you're clearly about to die just would be hard to fathom that doesn't get recorded.
But why? But does it? That's the only thing I'm wondering. Because in a moment, he's going to prove that he just doesn't want the scriptures to be true. That's all it is.
Especially when you read Josephus's accounts and you see all the other minute details that were provided. Again, arguments from silence, not super strong. This particular one, though, one of the strongest. And when you mix that with the fact that the only evidence we have for the account is an anonymous gospel, and only in one of the gospels, by the way, and one that contradicts the other stories told in the gospels, and knowing that that anonymous gospel writer had bias and intention of why he was trying to create this story, we start to form a lot more than just an argument from silence. If it were up to me, I would much rather trust that an event did not happen because one of the best historians ever in the ancient world, who made more notes about this individual than anyone else, did not include one of the most insane stories that would have happened versus an anonymous biased author trying to create something to fulfill prophecy.
Okay. We're going to come back to Josephus because, again, I mean, we can make that case. Hey, Josephus didn't write about it. Okay, fine. I don't think that Josephus wrote about everything that Herod did or that anyone else has done. So if it didn't happen, there's good reasons why it didn't get captured. There's good reasons why. Please remember, Bethlehem wasn't a big city. It wasn't a metropolis at all. We're talking about maybe 1,500 people. It was very small, I heard. It was very small. So we're not talking about a gang of people. We're not talking about a metropolis. So there is a good reason why maybe it didn't get captured. But even more than that, listen to why he doesn't want it to be true.
And bad, incorrect prophecy at that. I should also note Herod has 2 sons that come up in the Bible, and we should just clear the confusion. His son Herod that shares the same name is Herod Antipas. This is not the Herod who commanded the child genocide, if that even happened. He has another son, Archelaus, who we do hear about in this exact same chapter. Matthew chapter 2 is where we get all of this story. Now, we're not going to get into all of the different gospel contradictions around the nativity. There's so many, and there's a ton of history we can understand, like Mark is the first of the anonymous authors, and Matthew and Luke clearly both both copied from him, though they changed up their stories for their own purposes. And
So again, we're already besmirching, and it's going to be what it is. Brandon is going to, and his followers are going to subscribe to his ideology of, oh, it's an anonymous gospel. We really don't know. They copied one another, so on and so forth. John just kind of did his own styling. Okay, I mean, that's going to be what you're going to do. I don't know what else to say. I don't know how else to help you in that regard. I do want to just ask you, just think about why it is that Brandon has a vested interest. And I've said this before, Brandon has a vested interest in you not believing this. Why?
again, I'm using their names, but these are anonymous writers. We know that these are not these actual individuals. And then John comes a few decades after and adds in a whole new concept of Jesus that is just totally radical to what we first see in Mark. So what we're going to see from Matthew is
That's not true, though. No, the synoptic gospels do follow one another. No argument there at all. But John is not different. He makes it sound like John's like significantly different, like Jesus rode in a Honda or something.
is an attempt to reconcile tons of what he thought were good, legitimate Hebrew Old Testament prophecies about Jesus. This is after the fact editing. Just going through the story.
All right, so again, Mark was not inspired by God the Holy Spirit. Mark is just writing. I mean, Matthew's just writing because, hey, he just felt like writing. And he just wants to try to shoehorn these in. But listen, Brandon makes a real serious error, and I want you to catch it.
Itself, I'll do the highlighted versions for you. It starts with the visit of the wise men in chapter 2. They've seen the star, they're on their way, and for some reason, plot device, they happen to stop at King Herod's place and say, hey, do you know where this new king is? That's not an insane question to ask the current king. That's something these wise men definitely would have done, going out of their way as they follow the star. Sure. But this supposedly piques Herod's paranoia. He lies to the wise men and says, when you find him, come back and tell me, because I want to worship him also. And supposedly the wise men believe this until they are warned by an angel not to, and to go.
But let me ask a question. Why were the wise men there in the first place? Where did they get this prophecy from? See, Brandon wants to say that, oh, they're just trying to shoehorn prophecies in and try to fix the story to correlate with the prophecies. But that prophecy is actually kind of what kicked off a lot of the story. Where did they get that from? Where did the wise men, the men from the east, get the prophecy from in the first place? Therein is the question.
Go home a different route, which raises Herod's suspicion. And so he asks all his council, where is this baby to be born? They reference the prophecies. So again, giving extra credit to the prophecy that Matthew is trying to build for us.
So it's clear the prophecy did, in fact, exist, and he wasn't just, and other people already believed it. So it wasn't just that Matthew tried to create it in this narrative. It was already believed by the wise men and even by Herod's own court. Let's keep going, Jason.
And say, oh, he'll be born in Bethlehem. And this is where we get King Herod's order to kill.
So they knew. So this prophecy seems to be a lot more robust than Brandon is letting on.
All the baby boys in Bethlehem and the surrounding area. Now I'm going to read you this next part. This starts in 13. Now when they had departed, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared to Joseph in a dream and said, rise, take the child and his mother and flee to Egypt and remain there until I tell you. For Herod is about to search for the child to destroy him. And he rose and took the child and his mother by night and departed to Egypt. So that's the same day. The angel.
That's the same day. Let me ask a question, because I thought this too. And this is why I said, Brandon makes errors that literally are Google fixable, Google searchable. How far is Bethlehem from Egypt? Don't search yet. Just ask yourself. If you're like me, you probably thought it was like hundreds and hundreds of miles away. Because we think about, oh, well, the children of Israel, they wandered for 40 years. So it must have been super duper far away. It was 40 miles away. That was literally, they could have walked. And I did a little search real quick. Now, we presume he woke Mary with the baby, loaded up his donkey, and set out in the darkness toward Egypt. The shortest distance then from Bethlehem to the Egyptian border was about 65 kilometers or 40 miles, averaging about 3 miles per hour. Joseph and family would have crossed the border of Egypt after about 12-hour walk or hike. Now, of course, we in our now modern context, it's hard for us to think, oh, you just go walk it. But it was real reality for them. So it's not improbable that they walked into the border of Israel or Egypt overnight. It's not improbable, or within a day, because later on he's going to have a problem with something else and realize they weren't really that far away. Let's go.
Angel appears, and then they get up and they go to Egypt. By the way, here's an important part. Matthew does not hide his secrets well. He says, this was to fulfill what the Lord had spoken by the prophet. Out of Egypt I called my son.
So because Matthew is referencing the prophecy, he's lying? But we've already shown that the prophecies were already in the mix, if you will. We're already floating around amongst even pagans. So it wasn't just that Matthew was trying to shoehorn it into a gospel. It actually was already known.
So we know that Jesus has to be both a Nazarene, born in
Right.
Bethlehem, and come out of Egypt, if we are even considering some of these Old Testament prophecies to even be talking about Jesus. But Matthew does, and so he's working for a way to make it happen. He also wants to show Jesus as that next great Moses character. Moses has a similar baby escape story. It just becomes so very obvious how hard Matthew is trying to create this. And he's
But is he? But is he working hard to make Jesus who Jesus is? See, Brandon doesn't want the scriptures to do what the scriptures are doing to Christ. So therefore, every time that it points to Christ, he said, oh, you had some after the fact editing. Oh, you copied from somebody else. Oh, where's this fact that completely is ancillary to the whole story? Why? So far, Jesus is pretty spot on the money. He's pretty spot on the money. So therefore, is the prophecy about Rama weeping because of their children, is that possible that that works into the story? Sure. Why would it not? All the other ones do. Why would this one not? Come on. Okay, let's keep going, Jason.
not done. But I want to point out one inconsistency that comes up with Luke that shows that this can't be real, and or the account in Luke can't be real. They're mutually exclusive. In Luke 2:22 through 40, we get the story of after Jesus's birth, and we know according to Jewish law, this would have been 40 days later.
40 days later. So they've been circulating around Egypt and between Egypt and Jerusalem for 40 days. Okay, got you.
That they present him in the temple. You can't immediately flee to Egypt and peacefully, calmly, 40 days later, go present Jesus in the temple.
But you can, though. But you can. This is another one of those instances where Brandon could just literally do a Google search. There's actually a website called BibleStudy.org, and I looked up the maps that they are referencing, and it's not really that difficult. Now, granted, the trip from from the Egyptian border to Jerusalem, again, is only 7 miles. That's not improbable at all. That is not at all. Tell me that that's difficult. It's not. So therefore, let me pull it in. So you got to wonder, like, okay, Brandon, why can't you see this? This is not a hard task that, I'm gonna just I'll drop the link down in the description. Check it out down below. It's not hard to believe. So no, 40 days, it only took 12 hours to walk from Bethlehem to the Egyptian border. If you stayed relatively close to the Egyptian Israel border, you can get right back into there and back to Jerusalem without a lot of problems. Why is that difficult to believe? Why? Because you don't want to believe it.
100% cannot be true. But for the sake of this,
Wait.
immediately flee to Egypt and peacefully, calmly, 40 days later, go present Jesus in the temple. This
Why not?
100%.
Why can't it not? Like, again,
cannot be true.
But it
for
is.
the sake of this story, we're just going to keep going like Matthew knows what he's talking about. Then we get to chapters 16, where Herod actually does go and kill all these children. Then Herod, when he saw that he had been tricked by the wise man, became furious, and he sent and killed all the male children in Bethlehem and in all that region who were 2 years old or under. Then was fulfilled what was spoken by the prophet Jeremiah. I think this is in Jeremiah 31, by the way. A voice was heard in Ramah, weeping and loud lamentation, Rachel weeping for her children. She refused to be comforted because they are no more. I'm so sorry. Can someone actually explain to me how in Jeremiah this Rachel has anything to do with her mourning over her dead children with all of the children of Bethlehem and the surrounding area hundreds of years later? Like, what a ridiculous try.
Okay, so let me ask a question real quick. I understand Brandon's pain and consternation because he would have to admit, if he admitted that this one ancillary prophecy was correct, he'd have to admit that the other ones too were like, oh yeah, That's true as well. Yeah, that was true. And then it'll start causing a domino effect like, yeah, these are actually true prophecies. Now, why God chose that and why God pointed that out in Jeremiah, I don't know, but he did call the shot back in Jeremiah. He called it. And clearly, the Jewish rabbis and Jewish teachings believe that that was the case because that's why Matthew references it. I don't think that's hard to believe. But let me ask you another question. I don't see that as being a high tent post for the gospel message. It does help support it. It does add some context to it and some coloring to it, but it's not a high tent post. I got to believe this, or I have to understand this, or I must understand this before I make a decision or before I surrender my life. No, that's not the case at all. So why are you even making this argument? But wait till we got more. Let's go.
That's why I think it's such an insane thing when Christians are like, well, if you look at probability, one man fulfilling all of these prophecies, it's impossible. So therefore, Jesus is real? No, look how concocted and twisted these prophecies.
No, you're making them concocted and twisted. Now, I admit there's some I'm like, I don't know why that applies to him, but it's also not a tent post that you must hang your hat on. You don't have to. And you don't even have to understand it. I'm sure if you ask the run of the mill, who's a real Christian, the run of the mill Christian about all the different prophecies, they probably tell you they don't know many of them. But that doesn't mean anything. That does not exclude you from being able to understand who Christ is and what Christ has done.
Are. And then the last one here is the return to Nazareth, which starts in verse 19. But when Herod died, behold, an angel of the Lord appeared in a dream to Joseph in Egypt. So they were still in Egypt the whole time.
But that doesn't mean it stayed in Egypt. That means they were housed in Egypt. But again, we're talking 6 miles away. I mean, that is in some of our contexts. I mean, you go that far, just go to the grocery store. I mean, we're not talking about a big distance. Even in that primitive time, 6 miles away was not a long distance. But even for our modern context, that's nothing.
When did they present Jesus in the temple again? Saying, rise, take this child.
Remember, they presented Jesus in the temple 40 days after. Are you saying that they couldn't go and come back? I'm just asking. I'm only asking a question. Just asking a question. Could they not go and come back?
And his mother, and go to the land of Israel, for those who sought the child's life are dead. And he rose and took the child and his mother and went to the land of Israel. But when he heard that Archelaus was reigning over Judea in the place of his father Herod, he was afraid to go there. And being warned in a dream, he withdrew to the district of Galilee. But wait, didn't the angel just say, anyone who wishes his harm is dead? You're fine, go back?
No. See, Brandon is misunderstanding this again. He's not being warned twice. He's going to say that the angel warned him twice. No, the angel warned him one time and said, go to the land of Galilee. And he said, oh man, Archelaus is around there. Let me go ahead and just house right here. That wasn't a second revelation, wasn't a second visitation of an angel, anything of that nature. It's just what it is. But please understand, Brandon does not understand that even in the midst of man's frailty, God still utilizes man's frailty for his glory. So where Joseph stops is going to be key in this situation. Where Herod tried to kill the little boys is key to the story as well. I don't understand why you don't get this. I do understand why you don't get this. Sorry.
Then he hears that it's Herod's son Archelaus, which is apparently news to this angel. And the angel's like, oh yeah, let me give you another warning.
Nope. There was not another. There wasn't a second warning. It wasn't a second warning. There was no second warning, Brandon. It doesn't say that. It says that he was warned to go to Galilee. That was it. He's referencing back to the original visitation. That's it.
Actually go to Nazareth now. And why? Matthew tells us, and he went and lived in a city called Nazareth, so that what was spoken by the prophets might be fulfilled, that he would be called a Nazarene. Matthew has angels making mistakes just to find a convenient way to get Jesus not only out of Egypt, but in Nazareth, all for the sake of trying to fulfill prophecy. So yeah, when the Christian says your argument,
but no, he has an angel make a mistake. That's not true. You don't see any angel. You tell me where you see the angel say, oops, I made a mistake. Go here. No, it doesn't. He went to Nazareth. That's it. I mean, I don't get where else the problem is. I don't get where it lies. Let me know. He didn't go to Bethlehem because he said, hey, Archelaus is around there. Let me go and swing up here to Nazareth, out of the way. That's it. What problem is that? He's still in the land of Galilee. You just want this to be something different, Brandon. And I really want better for you, but let's go.
From silence isn't good enough, I say I'll mix this wonderful argument from silence, considering the historical accounting that we have of Herod, against the clear bias of the anonymous author of Matthew, and say that this story is clearly junk. The idea that not just Josephus, but that anyone wouldn't have documented that time at the end of Herod's life when he didn't just plot, but actually went through and killed all of these children on a whim for something that doesn't even make sense, we'd see.
Okay, so let's go back again. The prophecy was real because he saw like, hey, there's a caravan of people from the east coming looking for a newborn king. That was true. So in a moment, Brandon's going to tell us how many children were murdered, which, by the way, we have no idea. Now, we can assume it was hundreds, maybe it was tens, maybe it was thousands, who knows? Whatever we do know is this: it didn't bubble up to the point that Josephus felt like it needed to be documented. That's what we do know. So therefore, I'm going on the premise that the genocide did in fact happen, and it probably was a lot fewer children than Brandon's about to regale, or it was just Josephus was never brought aware to it. But let's keep going.
Some evidence of that. But again, sure, it is an argument from silence. And the Christian will also say, here's the deal. We did some digging and we understand that Bethlehem at that time would have been between 13 and 1,500 people. And fine, I won't argue that. Now, there is some inconsistency with what you would consider the surrounding area. I've heard some Christian scholars just say it was a half a mile. Whoa, that's pretty precise. How did you arrive at that? How do we know that it wasn't the next 3 or 4 cities around it? But okay, let's go with the most minuscule version of this, since apparently it makes Christians feel better. And
it doesn't make us feel better. It's just we don't know. So I'm not going to argue that it was 3 miles. I'm sorry, half a mile or 3 cities around. I'm not going to argue that. I don't know. I also don't know how many people were in Bethlehem at the time. I don't know. So therefore, I'm not going to pretend like I do and make something out of it that I don't need to. I don't know. But neither does Brandon. Therein is the problem.
you consider that half of the kids would have been females, that leaves us with approximately a dozen, maybe 2 dozen young males.
There we go.
That math is fine. Are we
24 male children under the age of 2 murdered in a short span of time in a offbeat town under Herod's rule? Okay.
you supposed to feel better that only 20 innocent babies were murdered? Does that make this less of a crime? Does it make it more?
It's a crime against Herod. Herod did the crime. I don't know. I think Herod is wrong. Herod was wrong. Herod is being judged for that. I don't know. What's the problem?
More believable? Like, what is the point you're trying to make with this? But
what is the point that you're trying to unmake?
Possible.
What is the point that you are trying to make, Brandon? I think would be just as equal of a question. What is the point that you? What do you want? What do you want?
That this happened and somehow did not get recorded in history. Fine. Let's give it its agnostic availability. And that's where I want to play for the second part, the hypothetical chance that this did indeed happen. I think that's actually more problematic for this God than the fact we just have an anonymous line author. Think about this with me for a second. God, the designer of life, who apparently sees all life as inherently dignified and with value, allows for his wise men to be led to King Herod, giving him this information that God knows what Herod will do with it, and then just has the wise men leave and not come back to Herod like they said they would, which raises suspicion, instead of just telling the wise men to go back and say, we were wrong. God has no problem with lying. We've seen it tons of times.
I have no idea where he got that from. God has no problem with lying. I have no idea why God is in the mix with any of the lying that transpired there. Why is God the one that did the lying? I don't get it. Pretty weird.
Or how about just not taking him to Herod in the first place at all? Problem completely fixed. But okay, let's assume all this craziness has to happen. God's okay with this so far. He warns Joseph, good, we got to protect Jesus. Why not warn the other families? Were there not enough angels to send the message around?
So at this point, it's just like, it's actually just a silly, childish argument. I've said this before. Brandon's argumentation is extremely juvenile. Dare I even say ignorant? It's childish. At no time, following this logic that Brandon likes to use, there can be no bad things that happen in the world because God should stop anything that's bad. And I think it's pretty clear from the passage that we see that God is actually in control of all of that. He allows those things to transpire because they move along the gospel story. And so those prophecies that were spoken in the Old Testament, hundreds and hundreds of years in the past, now come to fruition. And he called those shots in advance. That's really all it is. But Brandon wants to get hung up on this silliness, because keep in mind, Brandon also has mad problems with the fact that that Christians are against abortion. But he's against this. I don't get it. I don't understand how you are the same. I don't understand you the same, Brandon.
Or if we are going to interfere with the free will of man, how about an angel to go kill Herod? How about one to just soften Herod's heart or change his mind? But again, sorry, bear with me. Why does God not warn the other families?
Why does he have to? Why does God save anybody? I got a better question for you. Why does God save anyone?
Where's their free will when God concocted all of this to?
Where do you get free will from? Fun question. Where do you get free will from? Where? I don't believe that man has free will, or our free will, is limited by the fact that our hearts are darkened. So our free will can only be but so good. So, and our good is actually really bad. So therefore, where do you get our free will from? I'd love to know that.
To fulfill prophecy, right? If you believe Matthew, you have to believe that God ordained these 20 baby boys to be murdered just so that Jeremiah passage could get some credit. Is that worth those baby boys?
I'll go even further. I will say that God ordained it all from beginning to end, from Genesis 1 all the way to Revelation, the finish. I submit that God ordained it all, every last bit of it. How about that?
Or the trauma to those families, they would technically be the first martyrs for the Christian religion, and yet they get almost no credit. If this story is true, we have a God that once again par for the course.
That was really dumb to say that they were martyrs for the Christian religion. That is really stupid. I didn't hear that the first time. That's really dumb. He says some really gross things. I didn't realize that. That was really stupid, man. Okay.
Uses murder of innocent babies as a plot device, as a tool, as an answer to prophecy, and as scapegoats for his own son. We should be worshiping those little babies. We should be
What? He literally just said, okay, stop.
Setting up 20 murdered babies in our nativities. But that's not the pretty part that we want to focus on and teach our children. We just want to talk about sweet baby Jesus. This is increasingly my problem with Christianity, is the insane lens with which we view these stories in the Bible. The editing that we do as we pass it down and make it palatable. Oh, and sure, once they're fully indoctrinated and they've been through the Christmas season and all the songs that say all the nice things, and they get gifts and special cookies and stay up late and watch movies and all the wonderful things that do indeed make Christmas a magical time of the year, to them in their little brain, it's still associated with Christ and with the gift that his birth was to the world, supposedly. Not to those 20 kids. It was a death sentence. Can an all-powerful, perfect, all-knowing, all-benevolent, all-loving God not have found a way to bring his child to the earth to do what needed to be done, which was his own doing, without involving innocent baby murder? It sounds like he cannot, or he chose not. And I'm not sure which one of those is more egregious. It's a sick cycle that we curate this horrific book in such a way that we play on the emotions of young people or of newly converted people and get them hooked, like a drug dealer giving the best product to the new clients. I'm just letting him finish up. And then once you're so afraid for your eternal soul.
The claims taken here are not only bombastic and ridiculous, they actually just show the lack of understanding that Brandon has. So that's why I wanted to let this play out. There's only a few more seconds left. The reason I wanted to let it play out is because it shows just how much Brandon doesn't understand. He postures and positions himself as if he understands it, but he really doesn't. And it's not just Jason saying that he doesn't understand. He's literally showing you he has no clear understanding of what Scripture teaches or God's role, God's sovereignty. He has no understanding of that whatsoever. But let's finish.
We're so bought into the idea of this personal savior. You can read the rest of the horror here and it's too late for many people. And it's so unfortunate because it leads to an immense amount of baggage, not to mention the fact it's simply untrue.
Okay, I have no idea no idea how, who hurt Brandon? Who hurt him? I have no idea. But what I do know is that the Gospels are true. And Christ is available to Brandon just as much as he's available to anybody else. And if Brandon turned from his wicked ways, if God softened his heart, we would see a change in that man's life. But, hey, it is what it is. So until the Lord does otherwise, it's going to be what it is. I want to thank you all so much. This is going to be a one and done. I'm finished with this. My wife is still holding my eggnog, so I got to go get my eggnog. So I thank y'all so much. Merry Christmas to everybody. And until next time, everybody, grace